Welcome to Rings and Things, where we discuss Tolkien adaptations and texts.
We're just two hobbits from the Shire, one bringing the other along on this adventure.
I'm your host, Agnes, and this is my co-host,
Recurring guest star
JD. Today, we're covering episodes 5 and 6 from Season 1 of Rings of Power.
And just a heads up to all the listeners, I am currently recovering from COVID, so if I start to sound a little clogged up or gross, I think I should be fine, though.
Well, like we've done for the last couple episodes, we're going to go storyline by storyline.
Yes.
And the first one we're going to cover today is the Harfoot storyline.
Mm-hmm.
I love Poppy's walking song. It's my favorite thing to come out of the entire season of Rings of Power.
Wow. It is good, but I did enjoy it a lot, too, but your favorite thing is pretty impressive. Although I know you tend to be more interested in the musical than it seems to be among your interests, for sure.
Yeah, the musical aspects is definitely one of my interests, but also, like I said at the beginning, I thought this whole season was pretty mediocre, so this song really shines to me.
Yeah, I could totally see it being not a diamond in the rough, but a diamond in the eh.
Yeah.
I really liked the stranger applying peril to his past actions after learning what it was, and then deciding after being told that he's good. It reminded me a lot again of the Iron Giant storyline. The line from the movie is "You are who you choose to be," and it's an alien in Iron Giant's a robot crash landing on the planet and learning morality and language like all at the same time.
Yeah, and the language learning is conspicuous given the importance of language in Middle-earth as well.
Yeah, he doesn't know how to speak is very odd. His
acting is really good. When you have to act without any lines, it's so difficult, and he just knocks it out of the park.
Definitely. I'm curious why Poppy is with Nori and her family, because I thought she was with a different family.
She is from a different family. It was very subtle, but in the scene where the Harfoots were reading from the Book of the Left Behinds, they listed Poppy's family, and she shed a tear, and I infer from that her family was left behind.
Left behind. I swore she was with, even fell back from another cart at first to meet up with Nori and her family, but maybe I'm misremembering that. I do think it is good, convenient I put it, but maybe fortuitous or lucky would be a good way to put it, that the stranger needed to find a particular constellation and landed in the care of nomadic hunter-gatherers traveling around.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty good.
Also nomadic hunter-gatherers who happen to have a book of constellations.
Yeah. Oh, that too. Well, I imagine most nomadic hunter-gatherers who would have a book of constellations, but maybe I imagine a lot wouldn't too.
I don't know how many nomadic hunter-gatherers are a literate society.
Yeah, good point. But if they were literate, they'd care a lot about the stars.
True.
Near the end, they do end up in a dire situation. Creepy forest.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of, I had to put it down in this situation because he saves them with magic. And I was already suspecting this, but didn't say anything. I wish I had. Is the stranger Gandalf? I've been suspecting this.
I think you're going to have to continue to watch and find out.
Okay.
What I will say is that I was watching an interview from the showrunners recently where they said that at this point in writing the show, they did not know who the stranger was.
I think he's Gandalf. I think Gandalf, they probably wanted to give him an origin story. Although I guess if they didn't know who he was yet, I
just thought it was really interesting that the showrunners themselves had not committed to who this character was at this point.
As somebody who runs D&D campaigns, I totally relate with that. You just introduce a really interesting character and then you figure out who he is later. So the next storyline we're covering is Numenor.
Yes.
For some reason, and I feel like maybe I missed some things, but I know I'm not the king you've awaited, Halbrand says. No, hold on. This line is about Numenor, but this happens during the Southlands storyline. I don't know if you want to mention it here, but they say, I know I'm not the king you awaited. Bronwyn says this, and I'm like, there is Halbrand the king there, and was this already mentioned? And I should have known this already.
They've talked about how there's a ended line of kings in the Southlands. In the bar where the kid calls around your knife ears, he refers to a king returning, I believe.
Yeah.
So there's been mentions of it, but precisely the details around it is a little vague, and it's not from the lore. So it's just something the show has made up.
Okay. Yeah, they mention it, I think, a little bit in the Numenor storyline as well. Like, he has a sigil. That's how Gladriel knows about this.
He picked it up from a dead man.
Yeah, that's what he said.
So yeah, it's been referenced here and there. But precisely what it is, I don't think the show made particularly clear, and it's not building on any definite lore from the books.
Okay.
I think it works really well as a story. I like the tantalizing hint of greater history there.
Yeah, I do, and I did ask this at the end of our Numenor section, but now that we're talking about it, I do feel like it's a bit derivative of the Aragorn story, which Aragorn's story was also based off a lot of folklore as well. So I get that it's kind of hard to say this is Aragorn's story, but I do feel like the show writers kind of are the characters who aren't in there. They're trying to make parallels or similar rhyming characters to them.
I agree that this particular arc for Halbrand echoes Aragorn.
Yeah, and I don't know if I like it personally, but I guess I got to see it play out fully.
Yep, we got to see the show first.
I do, on the other hand, really like Halbrand. He's like kind of a mix between a charming rogue and actually like a sophisticated noble. It has a nice balance of both. I don't understand with the story on Numenor before they leave that there's so much controversy about the decision from the Queen. Mostly because it was a completely volunteer force of people. And the people who don't want to go are mad that the people who do want to go are going. And then Halbrand doesn't want to return, but the entire plan is staking on it, is like relying on this. It's quite the house of cards.
Yeah, this was not the most convincing part of the story for me either.
Yeah, it was a little bit hard to get through at times, I will say. I didn't love it.
Mediocre even.
Mm-hmm.
So, in our last episode, I observed that it was bureaucracy that stopped Halbrand from having a fresh start. But I also want to point out that Elendil invokes bureaucracy to assign his positions fairly for the mission.
Yeah, I do like how it all played out and how hard he kind of was on Isildur, although he does cave in the end and get Isildur the job.
He gives Isildur the lowliest position on the entire mission. Isildur should be able to volunteer for the mission, but he's not going to get a good position.
Yeah, which is good. That really put a star in Elendil's character book on my rating for me. Like, he made him a lot better.
I like Elendil. I also like Pharazôn as a villain. He's so deliciously cunning. His plan to set up a king in the Southlands is so well thought out.
Yeah, the scene where he revealed this is his plan too, like, so matter-of-factly and abruptly felt... exactly what you said is cunning is a great word for it. Brazen at the same time.
Bold, yeah.
Yeah, like, he just doesn't even care if anybody thinks it's self-serving or anything else. He's just a matter-of-fact about it. That does make for a very fun villain.
Yeah.
So, I mentioned this very briefly, but Gladriel goes through a sword training, and this is something I've heard about have it being like a real problem. Having a lot of soldiers use swords, it's really hard to coordinate sword attacks, which is why spears are usually the weapon that they give foot soldiers.
That was very interesting. I've never heard that before. How did the scene land for you cinematically?
I liked it. I did personally. It gave Gladriel a chance to shine. It kind of showed how green the recruits are with fighting. I do think, and like when First Blood was spilled and she said, "Congratulations, Lieutenant," that all landed really well with me. I do think it was kind of long, a little bit. It could have been condensed, but there were parts in there I really liked.
I also really liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard the scene get some criticism. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I liked it.
Yeah, I did too. So
my biggest complaint is swords instead of spears. That's like a weird JD nitpick. So I think if that's all that I can say about it, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I can't say I've ever heard that criticism of the scene before. The writing between Halbrand and Galadriel in the Smithing Forge is exemplary of what I don't like about the style of season 1. Lines like, "Why are you fighting? Because I cannot stop. Yada yada, touch the darkness," add in some random idiom and something like, "One cannot quench thirst by drinking seawater," and then never reference this idiom again. It just, this is what makes me cringe.
Yeah. I really think by the end of Numenor, there was a lot going on that I was just like, this feels bad. And this is definitely one of the scenes. It's just, this location was getting stale and the character conversations did not come, like, I think the problem is that it's melodramatic is what you're getting at. Does that sound right? Like, it's trying so hard to, like, come to, like, a demotan, like a climax, and it just falls flat. That's how I felt about it.
At the risk of not doing proper analysis, I want to say that it feels like it's trying to be profound and just utterly failing.
Yeah, I did like the line, "One can't quench thirst by drinking seawater," when it comes to revenge. But if, like you said, it's not followed up on, then how good is it really?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes idioms work, and I feel like just the idioms in season 1 don't work. It's the Harfoots, it's this, it's
the wagon.
The sea is always right. It's
okay.
There's a lot of lines that just don't land for me.
Yeah, they did kind of they did make each perspective society a little bit too focused on one thing, whether it be the sea or wagon wheels or anything. I think it works better for the Harfoots than the Numenorians, though. It feels kitschy like a Hobbit would do.
Yeah, the Numenorians are supposed to be particularly seafaring people, but it just doesn't land the way it's written to me.
Yeah, and like if you think about even in real life, like if you think about like how sailors have a different way to talk and they do talk about the sea a lot, it just doesn't feel like even that. It doesn't feel like it's earned. Yeah. It feels like it's just snuck into regular characters that don't really seem like they should be that particularly interested in the sea. Like all the people, like the Smiths and stuff, even though their whole society is based on the sea, probably wouldn't be talking about it like that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. This dialogue, and I think a lot of it got stale is the problem, and just things didn't work out.
It's pretty mediocre.
Episode 5, I really wasn't. I was 4 and 5 both kind of I was struggling to get through. It wasn't bad. It didn't offend me, but it was just like, okay, like I felt like it was kind of dragging on, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And this example is great for that. So another thing that's confusing is Galadriel and the Queen Regent have a conversation, and the Queen Regent threatens to talk to Halbrand directly, and he still was on the fence at this point about doing any of this, even like going, I think. And I mentioned like this would probably solve like 90% or 80% of the tension and drama on the whole Numenorian plotline, is just if like those two sat down and talked before Galadriel made any of her plans. But then it doesn't even show them talk, and it cuts to them leaving too, which was odd to me. I don't know. But I did like, I feel like the energy picked up once they left Numenor. I feel like Numenor somehow was just becoming a drain on the enjoyment of the show. And once they started leaving and things started getting fresh for me.
It transitioned to something happening.
Yeah, that's a good point. It wasn't just people talking about how they felt about things. They were doing something now. I do want to say that Galadriel revealed in her full plate, although it wasn't for the first time, it was the way it was cut in the music. It was very emphasized. I was excited to see that.
I liked that scene too.
Yeah, it was nice. We both made a comment on the boat about this.
Isildur! He takes the apple, gives it to the horse, and then what does he do?
He eats off the apple.
It's absolutely disgusting. And then vile. What does he do? He throws it into the ocean. He wastes the apple.
There was just so much wrong with that. I really wish he did not eat directly off a horse, though. First of all, I even before he took a bite, and I kind of felt that sort of going, I thought it was weird the horse nibbled the apple. Don't horses, like, eat apples whole? Isn't that their thing? I feel like every time I've seen a horse eat an apple in a show or a movie, they just eat the whole thing.
Middle school me is very ashamed of me right now for not knowing this horse fact.
Yeah, fair. I feel like every time I picture a horse eating an apple, at least, it's not taking a little sliver off to share with Isildur.
I can even give him this one, though, because Numenorean horses are pretty special.
I just don't think he should be eating off any animal.
I agree with that point. But the fact that the horse was able to not eat the apple whole, even if standard horses would eat apples whole, I'll accept that Numenorean horses are special.
Oh, they're dainty with their apples, okay.
I'd accept it. I'd buy it. Not the worst part of the show.
I think him eating off the apple was one of the worst parts of the show.
Eating off the apple is pretty repulsive.
So near the end of this, they're approaching land. Galadriel sees the land far before them.
Yep, because she's an elf.
I thought that was a cool way to show elves having different abilities than humans. Mm-hmm. Also, was she not sleeping? Do elves sleep less or not at all in Lord of the Rings, like in D&D?
It's more like elves in D&D don't sleep like elves in Lord of the Rings.
Right. Yeah, because it's derivative. Right, okay.
There's a couple mentions in The Lord of the Rings where Legolas talks about walking in waking dreams instead of sleep. As they're running across the plains of Rohan to try to catch up to the orcs, Aragorn and Gimli have to stop to sleep. And Legolas just kind of walks around meditating instead of sleeping.
Yeah, I missed it completely, which I kind of keep an eye out for that sort of thing. But
it's not in the movies, it's in the books.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Why I missed it then. It didn't happen to me.
Yeah, it was not emphasized in the movies, but this is mentioned in the text. Mm-hmm. So yeah, elves don't really sleep like... Yeah, elves don't really sleep.
Not like a person does.
No.
At least.
They have to rejuvenate, but it's not really sleeping.
I also, this scene, Galadriel and Isildur talking, she's very, like, and I guess it's because she got her way, but she's not being, like, standoffish or advocating for herself or being angry, which I get why she has to do that in the story, but, like, it was very refreshing, and I didn't realize how sorely, like, I wanted to see Galadriel be nice to somebody, because I feel like she didn't get much opportunity to at all so far this season. She's
been so sour.
Yeah, I mean, she has a lot going on. I'm not criticizing her character, but
I'm criticizing her character.
It was a breath of fresh air, I feel like, at least, and I think we can agree on that.
Yes, definitely. It was such a breath of fresh air, it didn't feel right.
Yeah, it was out of left field for sure.
So next up, let's talk about the Southlands and Adar.
So early on, there is a division about whether they should stand and fight or join Adar's forces, the orcs. They thought at the time they'd be joining Sauron's forces. I thought if those were the two choices, that standing and fighting would be a horrible choice. And I said that in the last episode we recorded too. They don't have the ability to stand and fight, really.
No, but joining orcs is a bad idea too.
Like, can you join them enough until, like, just long enough till you can run away or something? Like,
well, that's one of the things the show is exploring is the shades of gray that exist.
Yeah, well, yeah, and you see what happens eventually with Waldreg and the Southlanders that end up going that route. I will say that she did make a quite rousing speech, and, like, if I always try to put myself, if I were watching that, I probably would have still tried to stand and fight if there were other people standing with her. I wouldn't really want to leave my hometown behind or anything, or my family and friends, so I would feel pretty conflicted, but I do think if I were in charge or something, I wouldn't try to, like I said at first, like, hold a garrison in that fort or anything. I thought it was funny when Waldreg joined the orcs that he assumed Adar was Sauron. Like, the shooting of that scene kind of made me laugh. Like, he's like, I vow myself to you, Sauron, and Adar is just, like, annoyed, like, no, that's not me.
It's also funnier when you remember that Sauron is when you remember that Sauron means the abhorred in Elvish.
Yeah, I know. It was an insult too. Exactly. So,
hello, I'm here to serve the abhorred.
Is that you?
I totally get why they have to do it for the show.
Yeah. So the thing is, Sauron's gone, quote unquote, and I have been spending a lot of the show wondering if any of these characters are going to become Sauron. I don't know if that's really what's going to happen. I could see a few different characters.
Who do you think is on the table for Sauron candidate?
The two biggest one are Adar, but I think the scene kind of referenced it too heavily. If the scene didn't happen, I would suspect it more, but I think this was too on the nose, and the show writers probably even like, too many people think this guy's going to be Sauron. I think Theo might somehow incarnate Sauron with his... He seems like he's going to have a corrupting story one way or another dealing with these cursed magic items. So I think if anybody is, it could be Theo, or maybe, like, I don't know. I have a feeling that Sauron's somebody we know, even if it's somebody outside of those two as well.
You'll have to continue watching and find out.
So eventually, for a minute there, it seems like everybody's going to submit to survive. Like Bronwyn is pretty desperate, and I know, like, thematically that's not great ideal to make your life choices, alliances on, but I find it very easy to empathize with that. Put myself in their shoes. It would be very not like me to stand and defend myself if I were forced into something I wouldn't want to rock the boat, you know?
Yeah.
And the line she says during this conversation about "you were right to watch us, maybe it's just who we are," I think it's good commentary on how stigmatization leads to self-fulfilling prophecies, because I honestly think if the elves weren't there telling generations of these people about Sauron, like, they probably would have just mostly forgot about them or had them as like minor bedtime stories this many generations later, is my personal opinion on this.
If you don't like something, don't draw attention to it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and that's what the elves did the entire time they were there. It's the only reason that this is a prevalent idea in their society, I feel like. And probably why so many people were willing to up and leave and head off right away.
Mm-hmm. I agree that this is a very good story arc to illustrate these points. I
noticed Adar planting some seeds before battle. He didn't strike me as a gardener, even though he was an elf. This comes up later.
Yep.
Also, here he gives a speech about orcs. He said stuff about them having brotherhood and not having slavery in distant lands. I felt for the orcs for the first time, like, watching Lord of the Rings. Like, he made me feel bad for orcs.
Mm-hmm.
I intellectually, like, when I seen them whipped into serving, I knew, like, okay, they don't all want to do this, but this is the first time it really hit home. And I was like, oh, I feel for these orcs.
I really like the role that the orcs play in Rings of Power. I like exploring these themes. Not everyone does, but I actually really like it. Like you said, it shows a different side to what they could possibly be, maybe.
Yeah.
It asks the questions. I don't know that it provides conclusive answers, but maybe they will by the end of season 5.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it is hinted at a few times in what I've seen before this, that the orcs don't love being Sauron's army all the time.
No, they hate Sauron.
Yeah, they're not a fan of it. Like, they're not... This isn't what they want to do, it's what they have to do, you know? Or maybe have to is strong, but it's what they're being forced to do, or they're compelled to do.
Yeah, definitely. I think that Rings of Power is showing the orcs at what I would call their moral peak. This is the longest amount of time that orcs as a species will have as not slaves of Morgoth before they become slaves of Sauron.
Yeah, and the orcs be identifying as slaves, and this is later, but they lose a battle and end up in chains at the end too. Like, what are the humans going to do with those orcs? Are they going to be like a slave force? Like, I know this is something you kind of have to think about all the time with captured people in fantasy shows, but normally when it's human and human, it's just like, well, they're probably going to end up being slaves if we're being realistic, and this is realistic work. But the orcs' whole things were they didn't want to be slaves anymore, so I don't know if they're going to submit easily to humans re-enslaving them or not. But I guess I feel like that also isn't something we're going to get an answer for, really. That's like off camera.
Yeah.
But yeah, it made me wonder. I really was thinking about these orcs here.
But then they have a battle.
Oh yeah, yeah, and they actually run, which I was super happy that they did. I get that in the end they didn't. They had to. They got, you know, the orcs caught up to them, but that's exactly what I said. Like initially, is they just need to get out of there and get to somebody else. You know, somebody who can help them. That's the moral thing to do without being stupid. Mm-hmm. And they burned down the keep with the orcs in. I thought that was a good plan.
Mm-hmm. I thought that it was really cute that Adar could smell Arondir. The smell of elves is something that the narrator comments on in The Hobbit.
That is a nice addition. Then I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'll point it out when we get to The Hobbit one day.
Also, did Arondir have an armor change at this point? Or did I just not notice his cool but weird face armor?
I don't remember for certain, but I think he had the face on it the entire time.
Yeah, I like it. It didn't strike me very much until I guess it was actually being used, but it was pretty cool.
It makes me think of the Green Man.
The Green Man from
mythology.
Oh, just the Green Man?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with the Green Man at all.
He's interpreted as a symbol of rebirth, representing the cycle of new growth that occurs every spring.
Interesting. I will have to look into that. I think, so the Southenders, that's what I kept referring to them as. Is that what their canon?
Southlanders, yeah. Yeah,
Southlanders, okay. So them running and then having a desperate stand against the orc is really good drama. Like, I feel like the whole pursuing and the smaller force needing to run and hold out, like, I mean, I didn't know where this was going, that they would be saved in one night, but I thought they were going to have to run and hold out every night. Like, I feel like that is not really something you see in television or movies that works really well. Like, having to outrun a larger force and try to survive the attack every night is just really good.
High pressure.
Yes. Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, they'll be here soon. Let's survive to run again is kind of the vibe that they had.
Yeah. I thought that hiding a sword that cannot be destroyed served as a foretexturing to choosing to not hide the ring at the Council of Elrond later on.
Yeah, definitely.
Like the sword and the ring are kind of cast in parallel here.
Yeah, they are. They have a lot of similarities.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the scene with Theo and Bronwyn where Theo talks about his dreams? How did that scene land for you?
I put this quote down, right? I liked how it ended with the quote a lot. I was going to put wisdom, but I thought it had amazing dialogue at the end there.
The reason I ask is because this quote is from The Lord of the Rings, and to me, it feels very shoehorned in.
Oh, no. I didn't know it was from Lord of the Rings, and I liked it a lot. I wrote it down even.
But that's fine. The fact that you don't know it's from Lord of the Rings, and then it lands well for you, says that it's my knowledge of the lore that's stopping me from enjoying it.
Yeah. I might even... Should I just read it now, rather than waiting for wisdom, or throw it in down there?
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to read it now. But in the end, this shadow is but a small and passing thing. There is a light and high beauty forever beyond its reach. I don't know. I loved it. I mean, when you put it in the context of it's like actually written from there, I could see where you're coming from, how it would feel. But it's not how it landed with me, so...
This is actually a quote I read at the end of episode 12. But,
this specific quote?
Yeah.
Huh.
But, the fact that it lands well for you says that it's a me problem, not a show problem.
It could be somewhere in between. It could be a little bit, I am... With all my generous takes, sometimes I buy them myself, and I'm pretty optimistic, I guess is a way to put it when it comes to media. And I try to understand media from where it's coming from, as like we said, but sometimes I'll just not even realize I'm doing that and just like something that I probably would have had to convince myself in the back of my head to like. I'm not saying that this is what happened here, but I'm just saying that might be the only hang up with me being the true fair critic is I'm a very lenient judge.
Well, I'm very happy that this landed well for you because I'm always glad to hear people like things more than I do.
Oh, yeah. No, I really liked this quote. Maybe it was just because it was a good quote, and maybe it's only a good quote because it's from Lord of the Ring. Like,
I love the quote, too.
Yeah.
It's just I didn't appreciate how it was woven in. Mm-hmm. But like I said, your take on it sounds like it's my knowledge of the lore holding me back from actually enjoying what they did.
Yeah, and I don't know. The delivery of it, too, it did feel a lot like something like a more wise, world-weary, spiritual mother would say to comfort a child, too. Mm-hmm. That's what I thought of it.
Awesome. I'm glad.
I did. And then, so before this battle, they do show the other end. They show Arondir planting seeds and explaining it's a battle tradition of the elves or something. Which I guess Adar keeps, even though he's trying. Isn't he claiming that he's no longer an elf directly? Or is that something that got put on him?
You mean Adar?
Yeah.
Yeah, Adar...
Does he
identifies as an Uruk.
Okay, so he's no longer an elf to himself.
Yeah, but he's an elf.
But I get it. But
he's one of the first corrupted elves. And at what point exactly do the elves become Uruks is a great question. And the show is showing us what a gradient there is.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I like also the idea that like he was early on, so it's not much of a transformation. Like they didn't perfect the Uruk ritual transition yet.
Well, Adar was born an elf.
Yeah.
You can only change him so much.
Oh, so most of the orcs are born as orcs. They're
yes.
like descendants of the other elves who turned orc.
Yeah, over generations, the elves became orcs somehow. Adar is first generation. He was born an elf.
Okay.
Which is why he's more elf-like.
Yeah.
He identifies as an Uruk and as the father of his children because he is literally the first among them.
He's like a proto-orc, for sure.
Arguably, he could literally be their progenitor.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't know. They do call him father. I mean, people have called a lot of people father throughout the time and space, but for a lot of different reasons. But that's probably the most common one is he fathered those orcs.
Yeah, it's not confirmed either way.
Right.
It could totally be a more symbolic fathering, or it could be a literal biological fathering.
I think the whole point of having those metaphors are that it doesn't much matter. True. Which literally happened because at this point that's the dynamic, and whether or not that's a spiritual fatherhood or a intellectual, he's the first elf to come in and turn into an Uruk, or literal offspring creation. It doesn't matter because the social dynamics there, right?
Yeah.
Although it does, I mean, it matters for other reasons, but it doesn't matter in this context for that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I wanted to say that I don't understand, or I didn't understand at first why the orcs needed torches to see, but it turns out they needed them for burning things.
Yeah, and I think orcs still need light to see. It's just that they're sensitive to sunlight.
Yeah.
Torchlight is a little different.
Yeah, no, I didn't think they'd be sensitive to torches. I just thought, like, they should be able to see in the dark if they don't like the sun. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a lot of lore to back up whether orcs have night vision or not, canonically.
My impression was this is agnostic or neutral on whether or not orcs needed them to see because those torches easily could have just been to burn down any buildings.
Yeah. And the orc brings fire that they need to the hay cart in the form of a torch.
Uh-huh.
And I like this because it's an example of evil undoing itself.
Yeah. When she was struggling with the flint too, that was such good. Like, and that was right after I seen those orcs with their torches, and I was like, I was like, why do they have those? So like having me in that critical mindset helped me like kind of see it coming more that the orc was gonna have a torch that was gonna burn that cart, but it worked. I liked it still. I'm not complaining, but I'm just saying I was like, ooh, I see what they're doing there, and the flint not lighting was very desperate. It was good drama.
Yeah.
And I also like that the carts had to come down and crash into the works. I name a weapon more iconic than a cart and gravitational kinetic energy.
A spear.
A spear, maybe. I don't understand. So throughout the battle, it turns out that they were killing humans that dressed like orcs.
Yeah.
I don't get it, really. If they were trying to kill you and it was self-defense, the different... I wouldn't feel much different about it, really.
These were their friends, family, and neighbors.
Yeah, I guess. But they... Like, even if somebody I loved came and attacked me and en masse like that, maybe after the battle I'd feel a way about it. But I don't think in the moment it would much matter to me.
They're still grieving the loss of their friends, family, and neighbors.
That's true. I get it a bit, but struck me as weird.
Okay. I liked this, actually.
Yeah. Some of them realized, too, at the same time as me, that there's probably more orcs left, too.
Yeah, true.
And the arrow barrage is absolutely brutal. I love me some actually deadly arrows.
The mightiest man may be slain by one arrow, but Bronwyn was pierced by two.
She wasn't doing too great. And they didn't do great helping her either.
No.
They pulled out the arrow and waited so long to apply pressure to that puncture wound. I was like reaching out to my television trying to cover it myself, like, because it took them so long.
It was pretty brutal.
And it felt... So after that, I was going to say it felt a little gratuitous on the ick and intensity, but I think it was trying to express, like, it was trying to show what the onlookers saw, and because it did shoot back to them all looking as disturbed as I was.
Yeah. But I think that sealing seeds in a wound just seems like a bad idea.
Yeah, no, that doesn't seem like medicine.
No.
Does not seem helpful. I did want... Oh, so in the middle of this scene, so the orcs come in and they capture them, and it looks like it's really dark out, and then it cuts to the Númenóreans and Galadriel riding in the day, even though this orc battle was throughout the night. But it reveals that kind of a lot of time passed and the day is rising later. So I guess that resolves itself, but I thought it was weird showing them riding in the middle of the day when the last scene outside it showed was dark. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't say this stood out to me when I was watching it.
Yeah.
But I'm also not very good at catching continuity errors like that.
Yeah, I don't know. It made it seem like to me they were like on the other side of the continent, or like it was like out of order or something.
Yeah, maybe something was left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah. I didn't put a note on this, but the scene where the orcs started executing hostages, really, like, they were very brutal about it and not like, what's the word I'm trying to think? Like, ringing, like, they weren't holding back at all. They just, like, were, like, it was very sudden and very intense amount of violence all of a sudden.
They were being orcs.
They were being orcs, to be fair, yes. The Númenóreans do arrive and save the day. I think, Theo reveals the sword's location, literally like seconds before they're in the room saving them.
Yeah.
Which I get, like, shows love to write that sort of thing, but it's always so like, oh man, if he held up for like 20 seconds, 15 seconds, like, it wouldn't have been an issue at all. Mm-hmm. The entire world would have changed, basically. There was a scene I thought that looked really silly. Galadriel dodged an arrow and was riding a horse upside down and attacking somebody.
I enjoyed this.
You liked that part? I thought it looked very ridiculous.
That's completely fair. I enjoyed it.
I did like Theo. Theo was like in total amazement and like fangirling over Galadriel, which is how I feel most of the time too. I love that.
Yeah, he probably hasn't seen an elf before. Yeah,
didn't he know who Galadriel was too from Reputation? Was that somebody else?
I don't remember him knowing Galadriel.
Okay. And it is shown a little bit earlier, but Halbrand is very prominently using a javelin / polearm, and it absolutely made my day. Mm-hmm. I loved to see it, because you never see main characters using such weapons, but they're so good. I like them.
I like that you're so passionate about this.
I love polearms.
It stood out to me that Halbrand saved Elendil's life in the battle.
Yeah, with a javelin. He throws the javelin, right? That's what I should have mentioned it first. But he also, I realized it when he was about to execute Adar in the forest. Mm-hmm. But yeah, either way, yeah, and then he saves Elendil.
Because Halbrand's just a good guy, I guess, right?
Yeah, I like him.
One of the horses falls in the battle, just trips and falls, and then just gets up again. And middle school me does know that horses don't recover from falling down like that.
Yeah, no, they definitely do not.
I think it's when they're riding out to get Adar or something
Yeah,
like that.
I think one of them does fall. Like, it's one of the main characters' horses too, right? Or
Yeah,
no?
I think so.
Yeah, no, doesn't work like that. It made me laugh when Halbrand was said, "Do you remember me?" And I was like, "No." The Thanos, "I don't even know who you are," comes to mind from Infinity War.
Yeah.
It struck me during his interrogation scene that he looks a lot like Joaquin Phoenix. Who is he specifically, like, from the Joker. I thought he looked a lot like him.
Okay.
I don't know if that's on purpose or not. Probably not, but it struck me there.
Mm-hmm.
And then he comes out as he's against Sauron too.
Yep.
Which,
orcs don't like Sauron.
He's a good guy then, isn't he?
Opposing Sauron isn't sufficient.
No, I mean,
Saruman opposes Sauron.
Yeah, I guess that's true. And he was trying to steal some people's land, but it was for orcs. Like, the orcs don't have anywhere to move. Maybe they could have became farmers.
Well, there's lots of land in lots of places that's simply unclaimed.
Yeah, that is true. I guess maybe they could have gone. And he's really interested in that sword for some reason too, so it doesn't seem completely pure. But if this is his selling point, if this is his propaganda, I have bought it so far.
Adar has a lot of good points. I agree.
And he is an orc, or no?
He identifies as an Uruk.
Okay.
But he was born an elf.
Okay.
He is one of the first generation of corrupted elves.
If you're born an elf and then you're corrupted to be an Uruk, like, you can't turn into an orc. So it's kind of like I said earlier, like a proto-orc, maybe the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly. I would call him a corrupted elf, would be how I'd describe him.
Yeah.
Because I think there is a substantial difference between what Adar is and what the orcs are. But he's also not quite an elf. So
I don't think Adar would think there's that big of a difference, though, like, between him and the orcs.
Adar can stand out in the sun, orcs cannot.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a good one. The rest seems cosmetic, though. Like, he just isn't as ugly as them.
Yeah, which that isn't the criteria. But substantial differences, like, he enjoys the sunlight, whereas the orcs are burned in the sunlight, seem like characteristics which set him apart.
Definitely. Okay, I do see what you're saying.
But like we were saying earlier with Adar's propaganda, he has a lot of good things to say, I think.
Yeah.
I really like the explanation he gives to Galadriel, mostly. His assessment of Sauron's desire to heal the world by dominating it seems absolutely on brand for Sauron. This is exactly the kind of thing that Sauron would have as his propaganda, that he's really out here to heal the world, and the means he's going to use to heal it is dominating it because he knows how to do things best.
Yeah, that seems like Sauron's MO, and it definitely helps understand more like what Sauron's, because in the Lord of the Rings, he's just, you don't get to hear his motivation, right?
Yeah, you don't have a monologuing Sauron.
No, you don't. Which I kind of respect from the show, but I do like the expanded universe kind of going into more detail as well. Yeah.
What I don't like about Adar's story here is that I think a former elf would know that a Maya like Sauron was not properly killable.
No, probably not. He would probably know that.
Yeah, he'd probably know that, and so I have a little hard time buying the idea that he thought he killed Sauron and, like, ended him from the world. Like he totally could destroy Sauron's body, but he's going to know that Sauron's going to be back.
Maybe he thought, like, it was, like, when it says, like, it kills 99.9% of bacteria, maybe he thought he killed him enough to round.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's not coming back. He's just going to be gone. Like at the end of the Lord of the Rings. Like, at the end of the Return of the King.
I think that's the best take you can have, yeah. I think that's probably the best. He probably
is like, okay, he's like some sort of inconsequential spirit, like, who's unable to affect the physical plane. Who cares? That's probably what he means when he says he killed him. But
I'll play ball with that interpretation.
But I don't know if that's smart for him to assume.
Yeah, but, smart is a little different than what I was proposing, so.
Also, I didn't realize this, but Adar here is kind of crushing Galadriel's whole arc this season of trying to prove Sauron's still out there. He's with the, her opposition and the Elven lands of saying he's gone, like, don't worry about him anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like the High King and all of those other elves who told Galadriel to stop searching for him.
Yeah, if you believe Adar, it does undermine Galadriel's point.
Yeah.
Honestly, a lot of what he says undermines Galadriel because Galadriel's the one who sounds like the bad guy here.
Yeah. It's hard to argue that.
I agree with Adar's inferences that if orcs are truly corrupted elves, then they are still Iluvatar's children. This is what the Silmarillion has as the stated origin of orcs, that they come from elves.
Yeah.
And I think this is a necessary QED from that starting point. Tolkien himself had a lot of different origin stories for the orcs, and he didn't quite settle on one himself. Christopher Tolkien settled on the corrupted elves interpretation to publish in the Silmarillion. And Rings of Power is working with that.
Okay.
This particular origin story has issues that Tolkien didn't particularly want to wrestle with. Things like orcs still being Iluvatar's children. Tolkien wasn't completely comfortable with that.
Yeah.
But I don't mind that Rings of Power is taking Silmarillion lore and trying to explore the logical consequences of what's laid out there.
Yeah. And I think what they got from it is one of the most compelling villains in Lord of the Rings so far. I love Adar, like, as a villain. Very interesting villain.
Me too. He's one of the best characters in season 1, I think.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't think that evil has the kind of power it takes to be able to change the fundamental metaphysical nature of what it touches. So if evil is starting with elves and corrupting them into orcs, I don't think that evil has the power to change what it is Iluvatar made. If Iluvatar gave certain fundamental metaphysical characteristics to his elves, I think there's a certain amount of that will remain inviolate.
There's something I've read recently that touches on this a little bit. And I don't agree with it. I don't subscribe to this, but it's what some people believe. And it came across me algorithmically, so take it with a grain of salt. But there are people who... they believe a conspiracy theory that, like, the world is owned by, like, occult people who are casting spells on us, right?
Okay.
I don't subscribe to this personally, but I think it's interesting to read about sometimes. But one of their maxims is, like, you can't steal or trick somebody with or do evil onto them without gaining their consent, like, complicitly, and that's why they have all these symbols that they are secretly dark magic practice occult individuals.
Okay.
So that's why they, sneak hidden messages into the music and movies and stuff.
Okay.
That's their whole explanation for why they would tell us, right?
Gotcha.
Sure. If that's how it has to work, then that's how it has to work. But I do wonder, it does make me think, if the elves, like, consent to the evil, if it would have more power to change something fundamentally.
I really like this idea. I need to go think about it.
Yeah, like if the Adar wants to be an orc and does everything in his power to be an orc, and then that creates orcs, that might make sense to me on a metaphysical level.
I need to go think about this. I've never run into this idea before, and I think there's potentially a lot of merit to it.
But I don't really know. I am applying from, like, 100 different perspectives and views, and sometimes they come out, they make an interesting combination. Sometimes it's not much there, but let me know what you think as you meditate on that.
I will. Let's follow up on it.
And I wanted to clarify again for any of the listeners, I do not think that there's an occult cabal running the world. I do not. I swear. I don't believe that. Where does that leave us now? Halbrand and Galadriel both in the forest when they captured him, Galadriel had to stop Halbrand from killing Adar, and then during this interrogation, the roles were reversed, and Halbrand had to stop Galadriel. I thought that was funny. I really liked that.
As a team, they don't kill Adar.
Yeah. Like, if it wasn't for both of them, like, they both did and it wasn't even that far apart. They just both really hate this guy that much.
Yeah. I really liked the feasting song that they were playing during the post-battle feast. It sounded a lot like a podcast theme, I know.
Yeah. I definitely know what you're talking about. I should have seen the twist at the end of this plot line for this episode coming, though.
Yeah?
I didn't, though. I will say I didn't call it until they were opening it up, like, a second before it was revealed, and they were kind of made it obvious through, like, music and, suspense building and stuff. It's like, okay, they're not going to build it up this suspenseful, and it's there. Mm-hmm. Like, a split second before it was revealed to be some sort of hammer. But yeah, no, I didn't even consider that until it was pretty much too late, just like the main characters.
In the end, it was just some scared, misguided guy who causes evil's plan to come to fruition.
Yeah, and I don't know where it is either, so I want to keep watching to find this out. This thread so far, the Sauron's sword, I think that was Sauron's sword, it's been very interesting to me.
Awesome. The contraption that they used to set it off, I was almost ready to write a note that this was industrialization. Then as I was thinking about it, it all actually just seemed mechanical.
It's a fine line, though. It's like, keep an eye on that needle,
Yeah.
Is it about to go into industrial? Nope.
Yeah, I think this was a false alarm on industrialization.
Yeah.
So our last storyline is the dovetail of Khazad-dûm and Lindon together.
Yes.
So we spent a lot of time talking about dwarves and vulgarity in The Hobbit.
Yes.
I really liked when Durin was picking food from his beard. Mm-hmm. I thought this was a very tasteful way to depict dwarvish crassness.
Yeah, they don't need to go over the top. That is you're right, that is a great way.
Yeah, it's subtle, it's inoffensive, but still offensive.
Yeah.
Now, his being cut off from what he was saying was better than letting him say it. But I felt that his almost faux pas in what he was saying could have simply been omitted altogether.
Yeah, that's true. They could have left him at picking food out of his beard. What do you think about him having a fake story to get that nice table? Do you think that was a good depiction of dwarf crassness, or do you think that was over the line too? Because it was like a direct lie to get a material object.
I think that goes from crassness into actual lying.
Like that's just a crime.
Yeah.
Basically, maybe not. If not a crime, then definitely just straight up stealing. Still.
Yeah.
Even if not legally.
Mm-hmm.
I liked it though. I thought it was pretty clever and funny.
It entertained me, but I do have some issue with it. But the fact that it entertained me is at least a point in its favor.
Yeah. I am confused how the High King even. I think there was a lot. The High King speaks in riddles, so sometimes it's hard for me to keep up with what he's saying when he's talking about some of the stuff. But how did he know to suspect Mithril was found? Does he explain this in the show, or is this something?
I don't remember
later?
An explanation on this. I would credit it to just being the High King. He probably knows some stuff.
Yeah, and then if he already knows it, why does he need Elrond to confirm it so, emphatically? Maybe to get Elrond to commit to elven loyalty over his dwarven friends. Yeah, and then in this meeting also, I mentioned, why are the elves expanding that as, Durin mentioned that. If this is going on, why are they trying to expand settlements? What? Doesn't make sense either. I think the expanding is mostly Celebrimbor's forge. Oh, okay. Which we still don't understand. Well, like I said, I do not understand why he needs it by spring. Celebrimbor is a master craftsman. Okay. And so the fact that he wants the biggest forge ever to make the biggest, best thing ever, that part does track. But needing it by spring is something that is never sufficiently explained to my satisfaction. Well, Well, so I feel like that is just a cover, really, is why, because the real reason they were there was to be a probe about Mithril, and the Forge was just like a red herring, so the dwarves thought they had a reason to be there.
Oh, you think Celebrimbor's Forge is a contrived reason to spy on the Mithril?
Yes.
Oh, that's a new one.
Yes, I do. I think that there isn't any, like, they just are saying they need a forge for spring. I don't know what their official story is, but I think that is the High King wanted Elrond there to look for Mithril.
Huh.
And he knew Elrond would find it if it is there. Why he suspected it needed him to look, I don't know. But, I mean, I don't know. If the forge ends up coming up later and being really important, and they really did need it, then it still could just be a convenient, like, we needed this anyway, and it's good cover. But I do think that is what the High King never really cared about the forge. Mm-hmm. I think from the beginning, he wanted Elrond to be looking for Mithril.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. I like that. I'll have to consider this one as well.
But yeah, I still think they should have a better cover story. If it doesn't make sense for them to have a Forge by Spring, then it's not a good cover story.
Yeah. The Song of the Roots of the Hithyglir. It is in Apocrypha that this story lives, and it is in Apocrypha that this story should stay.
Is this gonna be an Agnes hot take?
I don't think it's very hot.
No.
I think it's pretty lukewarm.
It's a lukewarm take?
Yeah. This scene is very problematic to me. And honestly, I've heard a lot of criticism of this scene, and this is one that I agree on.
Okay, remind me exactly what the roots of Hithyglir it was.
The Song of the Roots of the Hithyglir.
Hithyglir.
This is the story that Gil-galad, the High King, tells Elrond about the origin of Mithril.
Okay. Yeah, I like that's exactly what I meant. He was speaking in riddles. This was definitely one of them. He
was telling this vaguely allegorical story about an elf and a Balrog fighting on a mountaintop. Right. And the elf has such pure good and the Balrog has such pure evil that when they clash together, they make this...
There's a tree between them?
Yeah, there's a tree between them, and they clash onto this tree, and the tree shoots their combined power down into the mountain, and it makes a metal that is... I forget what qualities it has, but it has, like, the purity of good and the strength of evil or something like this, and this all feels really bad.
It doesn't, like, you're talking from a metaphysical level.
From a Lord of the Rings metaphysical level, this is awful.
Yeah. Yeah. Explain why.
So, evil does not contribute good qualities to a whole. Remember, evil is the absence of good. Evil can't make a strong metal. Yeah. Strength is a good quality.
Yeah. Well, okay, so that's the good part that is the strength. I think the evil part, if we're going to take this, the evil part is the addiction to it.
But that's not what Gil-galad says.
Yeah, well, I don't like that guy. I don't like him. I think he got it wrong.
Well, he says this story is apocryphal. It's definitely not in the lore, that's for sure. Oh, and okay. So that's why I'm saying in Apocrypha, it should stay.
I'm going to say if you're going to say that Mithril contains good and evil, the good is why it's such a good metal, and the evil part is that it drives you to lust for it or have an insatiable greed.
Except it really doesn't. I mean, Frodo has that Mithril coat, and he never reacts badly to it.
That's true, yeah.
Mithril doesn't really seem to have corrupting tendencies.
I feel like when the dwarves are digging for it, it definitely seems to have multiple times on almost a magical level influence them to keep digging for it, but that just might be how dwarves are. Yeah. They might just dig too deep all the time, regardless.
Dwarves are given to greed more than other vices.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely seems to be fundamentally part of their arc as a whole species.
Yeah. And I think the absence of mithril greed among other species would indicate to me that it's more of a dwarf thing than a mithril thing.
I'll hold out until we see a human mining settlement react to mithril and stay calm about it.
Okay.
If we see that happen, then I see this point. But I think anybody mining it might go for it for crazy. But it doesn't have that aspect in the actual objects it makes. It's just the act of uncovering it.
Mm-hmm.
I got that vibe from a few different things in the lore here. That's just what I picked up and thought about it personally. But I don't know. I'm really, really stretching to do a generous take for a scene I didn't even like.
Yeah.
So
fair.
I'm just gonna lay this where it is.
Well, another thing I didn't like about this was I did not find the explanation of the elves' relationship to Mithril to be entirely plausible.
Yeah.
So, in the book lore, elven spirits do not fade or diminish until the end of the world. Like, their souls are going to stay intact. Elven souls stay in the world until the end of the world, in some form. Like, they might go to the halls of Mandos for a while, and then get reincarnated, or something like that. But fundamentally, elven souls stay in existence as long as the world is in existence.
Okay.
Elven bodies don't fade or diminish that quickly. They do fade and diminish over the course of time. But it's not going to be by spring.
No.
The apocryphal story is one explanation as to why Mithril could have this effect on the elves. I don't like this explanation, but it is one explanation.
It was... Okay.
I want to hold out to see if perhaps there's another story as well that this show is going to flip to and say that, oh, this apocryphal story is the lie that we believed this whole time.
Yeah, that would be a little bit of a fun bait and switch.
Yeah.
A little bit. Still not worth it. I feel like this is far too contrived, but go on.
But I guess I'll just have to wait and see until the series is complete to know for sure about this storyline. The way it sits, I don't like it.
I feel like even if that's what happens, like I said, like the amount of like frustration for you because you understood it and it didn't make sense, and then confusion it caused for me because I didn't understand it and it didn't make sense. That's what happens a lot during these shows. If something doesn't make sense from a lore perspective, it just doesn't make sense like on a vibes level for me. Like with Gandalf being hesitant to go to, oh my god, the keep in the Two Towers. Like it didn't make sense to me, and I was confused why they were fighting. And you knew from a lore perspective, also it doesn't make sense. So like you have
a strategic perspective.
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, strategic perspective. That's why I hesitated. But there's all this sort of things. This happens very often when we're going through, and you know why it doesn't make sense. And I just like I get confused. It doesn't make sense, and then it kind of just doesn't stick because it doesn't make sense. And this whole hiking speech, like I watched this scene. I actually rewinded and watched it twice, and I did not get what he was talking about.
You have a very good gut.
Like it's like I don't know, the tree story and the merging the mithril, like it finally clicked for me, and I didn't like I followed along long enough, but then talking about how it would help the elves and the elves are fading, I'm just like I don't understand any of this.
Yeah, I didn't really buy it either.
Substantiated, and I don't know. It just turns out it is wet cardboard, nothing to stand on, no structure.
Nope, not at all.
I did like Durin getting frustrated with Elrond, though. That was amazing and funny.
Their friendship is so funny. I like it.
I do think it was very good that Elrond owned up to needing the mithril, if that's true, which we're on that assumption right now, and also unknowingly being a probe. That was very honorable of him.
Mm-hmm. Now that I have had my disclaimer about not liking the mithril thing, I'm going to try to not talk about that and just continue on this premise and appreciate the rest of the story for what it is.
We're going to run with it for now.
I have made my disclaimer.
I will say it would make a lot of sense for the High King to actually need mithril for other reasons, because he is shady.
Yeah, he's supposed to be a good guy in the lore.
He's not a good guy in the show. I don't even feel like he's like controversially good. Like he's just like emphatically bad.
Mm-hmm. There's definitely a lot of criticism of his character.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like you're supposed to hate him though. Like he's a villain, kind of.
Yeah.
I have final thoughts. I liked episode 6, even though most of this discussion we were just complaining about wasn't episode 6. I felt like a lot of the things were tied together. You know, the Númenorian and the Southender Southlander scene are one now, which is good. I always like when that happens in a show like this anyway. It's always a keystone moment for me. I feel like a lot of stuff kept me watching in episode 6, whereas in 5 and I think 4 and maybe 3, it was just dragging on. So it was nice to get some movement.
Yeah.
I liked what the show was doing for this episode. Well, the second half of our episode where we're discussing episode 6. 5 wasn't horrible. Like, I wouldn't say anything the show has done so far is horrible, but there are parts that I found less than perfect.
Mediocre, even.
Mediocre. All in all, though, I feel like there's still great spots, and you just have to wade through okay stuff. There's nothing that is so bad that I would say don't watch this, like the Hobbit films.
Well, that does it for our rings. Now let's do our things.
First, we have Wizard's Wisdom.
I swore an oath to Durin. To some, that may now hold little weight, but in my esteem, it is by such things our very souls are bound. I do not intend to let mine slip away on the basis of a mere hope. Hope is never mere, Elrond, even when it is meager. I think these are great quotes, but I just want to add that Elrond should absolutely keep his oath. Any pressure he's getting from Gil-galad otherwise is not to be caved to. And I think this is probably the strongest argument that I have as to why Gil-galad is a bad guy.
Yeah. And also he is definitely twisting words because he says, I'm not going to, let my oath slip away based on mere hope. And he's like, oh, hope is never just mere. It's the greatest thing. But he's really twisting his words. Like he's trying to get him to break his vow out of despair, a lack of hope,
Yeah. And that's a very brilliant insight, I think.
Which is just pure villain behavior.
Yeah.
I think Elrond keeping his vow is very good.
Definitely. The other quote I liked was Galadriel's quote on the boat to Isildur when she says, "Despise not the labor which humbles the heart."
Yeah, that was a good one too.
Yeah. Next we have a language, lore, and letters. So I would like to begin talking about a letter that Tolkien wrote. It's numbered in the book called The Letters of J.R.R. Tolkien as letter number 210. This is a letter that Tolkien wrote as a commentary on what's called the Zimmerman script. It's a film adaptation that was never made. Okay,
yeah. I thought that was quite an interesting concept when this was put forth to me as a lore languages letter concept, an unmade 50s Tolkien movie.
Yeah, one that Tolkien himself wrote an entire commentary on.
About, yeah, well, we'll get into why maybe it wasn't made here in a minute.
Yeah, maybe. So perhaps the most often quoted excerpt from this letter is, quote, "The canons of narrative art in any medium cannot be wholly different, and the failure of poor films is often precisely in exaggeration and in the intrusion of unwarranted matter owing to not perceiving where the core of the original lies."
I thought that was an interesting take from Tolkien. I have my own thoughts about what makes an adaptation bad, though, that are slightly differ.
Mm-hmm. And there's no saying that Tolkien's opinion is the only correct opinion.
But he's basically stating here that an adaptation needs to be very faithful, basically. That's what he means with this quote?
So I think that there's two things really that this quote is saying, I think. First, that it implies that the canons of narrative art do have some differences. When he says the canons of narrative art in any medium cannot be wholly different,
okay, so
he means that they can be somewhat different.
Right, okay. I missed that distinction, but you're right. That is implied, exactly.
And then I think he goes on to say that the goal of a good adaptation lies not in recreating everything exactly as it is in the book, because you're going to have some differences in narrative art, in the canons of narrative art, but in capturing that core of the original.
Yeah.
Of course, there may be some disagreement about precisely where that core lies.
Sure.
But that's where you get into opinions about, some people are going to think it's a good adaptation and some people are going to think it's a bad adaptation, even though they're viewing the same movie and have read the same book.
Yeah, that's true. There was something in, I think we were talking about our War of the Rohirrim special, about the adaptational choice to include stuff, even though this War of the Rohirrim is a fill-in-the-blanks adaptation, and Tolkien here is talking about a direct adaptation.
Yep.
Something a lot of adaptations do are, like, two things that were adaptational in there that you didn't like were the Death Scream and then the Orcs with the Rings. And I feel like these are examples of stuff where it is missing the heart of it, but I think it's trying too hard to be like a good adaptation where it's hints at things that are in other pieces of the literature,
Yeah.
But it does it at the expense of actually having a good story or the actual rules of how the world works, which really, really dampens the adaptation. I feel like this isn't touched on by Tolkien, but he has half of it. Like, this is the other half, is you have to have what makes a work good, like the heart of it, right?
Yeah.
So I think I feel like the other example I had is kind of going too far in the other direction and liking the work too much and kind of trying to put too much of the work back in the work. I feel like there's a balance.
Yeah, I think the War of the Rohirrim examples mostly are a consequence of the fill-in-the-blankness.
Yeah, but I wouldn't by any means say that War of the Rohirrim missed the core of the original as much as that is.
I think they hit the core of the original pretty well with that.
But I still think there was some adaptational weirdness because they were still trying too hard to hit the core of the original without being its own thing.
Yeah.
That kind of ruined some other things in it. Mm-hmm. Because of the implications that means. Although, I do like now that we have extended lore universe, Gandalf for some reason likes rings in multiple things now.
Yes.
So, I guess that works out a little bit. Anyway, that's what what I was reading through this, and he said that. I think he is mostly right, though. I agree a lot with him.
I'd say a good example of missing the core of the original would be that Song of the Roots of the Hithyglir.
Yeah, that was something.
Yeah, I think that's a good example of missing the core of the original because the nature of evil is pretty core, and that story pretty much misses it. Well, Tolkien was very critical of the Zimmerman script that he was reading.
Uh-huh.
And tonight, let's take a look at a couple of his criticisms.
Right.
We're going to come back to this letter and cover more of it in later segments as well.
Also, I just want to say, if I am talking about this, I didn't read the letter in full. I've read excerpts, like the beginning few paragraphs. I did not get all the way to the end. So if I mention something that he references later, that is why.
Okay. Well, we're just going to cover the first couple points in the letter, and then we're going to come back and cover more of the letter in a later episode. Because it's kind of a long letter. It's like 8 pages.
It is quite long. I read a little bit more than what we're going to be talking about today. But like I said, I didn't read it to the end, so if there's something at the end that he hammers on exactly, I did not know.
Yeah, well, we'll get there when we get there. So, first off, some of his criticisms seem a little pedantic to me, I'll admit.
Yeah.
Like objecting to there being flags on the fireworks display for Bilbo's party. I get where he's coming from when he says flags of what. As a world builder, he'd be concerned with the vexillology of that. But it also doesn't seem worth the space he gives it in his letter. Yeah.
He the line he puts after is like, I liked what I picked just fine. Did feel like a little bit like, okay, Tolkien. Like, yeah, he wanted to, but I also think on the other hand, flags of what kind of also hammers at another point he makes about like, there being no government, like for Bilbo, like to register his house to or something like that. I think he mentions. There's something like that he mentions in the part that was covered by today. But I feel like he did have a bigger meaning, but still it's like some of it Tolkien could have
you could just have flags to be pretty.
Yeah. Yeah, and he also was upset that there were Hobbit fireworks. And he's like, I didn't say that, but it's like there would be no reason they wouldn't have Hobbit fireworks.
The fireworks are kind of magical is the thought there.
Yeah. Either way, pedantic is the perfect word for it regardless.
Yeah, well, he has a right to his own opinion about the adaptation of his work.
Yeah.
But this was not one that he particularly persuaded me of.
Yeah.
I am sympathetic to Tolkien's objections about the eagles. He explains that the Zimmerman script has the eagles appearing in the Shire, completely unrelated to their eucatastrophic symbolism. Perhaps less important to me is his objection to the use of Radagast as an eagle name.
Uh-huh.
But I am sympathetic to understanding why this is important to him as a philologist.
And it's just like an odd thing because Radagast is another thing already there.
Yeah, and Tolkien makes a good point that there are several eagle names in the book.
Yeah.
So why not just pick Landreval instead of Radagast?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the Zimmerman really liked how Radagast sounded and wanted to say it more, I guess.
Or he could have put Radagast in the script.
Sure. Yeah, if you're throwing the Eagles in for no reason, you may as well throw in Radagast. Yeah, I wish I could have read the original script, but I want to see how offensive these Eagles were in the Shire. Like, it does seem like very easy to mess up. Like, I don't know if there is a right way to do it.
Well, I'm a fan of the eagles only showing up when there's eucatastrophe to be thought about.
Yes. I see that this might have been a joke, but there was a short interview with Tolkien, and somebody asked why the eagles didn't just ride Frodo and Sam to the Shire, and he answers, he's like, well, they didn't do that because, well, shut up, that's why. Something like that. I don't know if that was a true quote from him or somebody was joking.
I am 99% sure that this is an internet pieced together artificial thing.
Yeah. Did you see it? Did you?
I have.
Yeah. It's exactly the energy of this letter, though, a bit. Well, no, maybe the opposite way, I guess. But it felt...
Why didn't the eagles fly the hobbits to Mordor is a very common quote-unquote hole that people want to poke in the story.
Yeah, but you don't know that Tolkien actually commented on it or not? I knew that was something people would ask all the time, too.
I'm pretty sure that this isn't a thing, but...
I'll send you the video I had. Maybe you could tell by the recording if it sounds like a real Tolkien recording, because it might just be voice actors trying to sound like him. It's like 20 seconds or something.
I've seen it before.
Oh, you've seen the exact video?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm pretty sure it's fake, but it feels real enough to me.
Yeah. When I saw it, my reaction was, I'm pretty sure this is fake.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't prove it, but I'm pretty sure it's fake.
I'll come back and prove that it's fake. I'm sure it is. But it's just with him mentioning the Eagles, I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah.
At this point, it feels the most appropriate.
Definitely.
Yeah, Tolkien definitely was very particular about when he used those.
Yes. And I think that it's important for an adaptation to respect that.
They're like one of the most fundamental like symbolisms in his works. I remember even reading this in The Hobbit, like the Eagles being that important.
Yeah.
He the way he talked about them, it was like, oh, this is like he's borderline like has his narrator have reverence for these things.
Definitely. Time compression is another thing that Tolkien takes issue with. And this is actually directly relevant to Rings of Power.
Yeah, I read that. So first let's talk about it in Lord of the Rings, because I have, if you remember, some thoughts about time and the original trilogy.
Yeah. So in Lord of the Rings, Tolkien's main objection to the time compression is that it throws off the seasonal significance of the story, the way Zimmerman put it in his script.
Yeah.
Tolkien says, quote, "The main action begins in autumn and passes through winter to a brilliant spring. This is basic to the purport and tone of the tale. The contraction of time and space in Zimmerman destroys that. His arrangements would, for instance, land us in a snowstorm while summer was still in."
Yeah. Yeah, I agree there's no reason at all to condense the plot line, but I also wanted to comment that showing different seasons pass is a very great way to show time passing in a work of fiction, especially a visual one.
Yeah. And I think there is an artistic elegance to the seasonal progression in Lord of the Rings.
Yes, on top of just being a convenient set piece to show the clock of the world is the meanings of ending in spring, a new beginning and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the eucatastrophe that happens every year when spring comes.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I don't get why you would think everything that happens in Lord of the Rings needs a quicker timeline at all. Like what you gain from giving up that metaphor.
Yeah. I think this type of time compression that Zimmerman puts in his script is fundamentally different from the time compression that we see in Rings of Power, though.
Uh-huh.
In Rings of Power, the creation of the rings and the fall of Numenor happen 1,500 years apart.
Oh, wow.
Rings of Power is compressing all of this from the Second Age into happening right close together. Everything's happening pretty much sequentially.
Yeah.
And while this may have some adaptational costs, it won't be the same type of costs as changing the seasonal impact of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, well, that's kind of getting into scope of the story, too. Like, when you are as zoomed in as you are during, like, the works of Lord of the Ring, like, a few months matter. But, like, if you're looking at, like, something that was in the Silmarillion or Letters from Tolkien or something like that, compression can happen and not matter as much at all. I think that's what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
And even if there are some costs, it's just fundamentally a different type of time compression.
Yeah. Well, again, it's just because the amount of like fine detail that are in the books and the time that passages versus like 1500 Tolkien might have just picked as a placeholder and it might not have mattered to him at all.
There are some who think that.
Yeah. And it may have. I don't know if that's that's not my take. I'm just...
Corey Olsen, the Tolkien professor, is of that opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me like that. The time he was still working on the timeline for that sort of thing.
Yep.
He didn't publish any of that, you know?
Yeah, it's the 1,500-year time skip is mentioned in a table.
A tape. Oh, well, yeah. He totally could have not even really considered it real even.
Yeah, it's like in the tale of years in like a chronology. It's not even like in the story, so to speak.
But if it was important for some reason and we take it out and the adaptation doesn't suffer, if there's no real reason to have such a time gap, that, you know, because he didn't get around to making that yet, that like if it was important for a distinction for a reason that he didn't write it down and we don't know it.
Yeah.
So I think it is pretty harmless for Rings of Power, as far as I know.
Yeah, I would agree. It's just a fundamentally different type of time compression.
Exactly. And that's funny because you think like, oh, well, if you think you could compress 6 months into 3, it'd be fine, but compressing 1,500 years would be horrible. But it's the context that matters.
Yeah, it's the scope of the story, like you said.
Okay, I think that is all we have. You can follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram through the links in the description. Please follow, like, and subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and other major podcasting platforms. To have your question or comment featured on the podcast, please send an email to shirepost.ringsandthings@gmail.com.
If you are enjoying the podcast, please consider contributing to our efforts through the Patreon link in the description.
Hearty Hobbit thank you to our first supporter, Lori J. from Florida. We are deeply grateful for your support.
A special thank you to our editor and spiritual producer, Stephen Jeffrey, and thank you for listening.